I'm sure most of you saw Chris Eubank Jr. and George Groves face off in the ring after Groves' fourth round knockout of Jamie Cox. There was a post-fight interview with the pair of them, post-fight press conference. A lot of things were said. George Groves says he's going to win the fight in dominant fashion. Eubank Jr. says the same thing. Groves says Eubank Jr. is not really a super middleweight, etc., etc. If you saw my post-fight video, you'll know that from what I saw with my eyes, that was the sharpest George Groves that I've seen for years. Now, I did have a little bit of backlash from saying that, because some people were saying, what are you talking about, Hatman? Groves got pinned on the ropes and got caught with shots he shouldn't have got caught with and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just going to reiterate what I said in my post-fight video. Groves has never, even at his absolute best, he's never been defensively blessed. He's always been a guy that gets caught. You go back to when he fought people like Paul Smith. You know, he got caught with a few shots even in that. That was a short fight. He got caught with shots in that fight. Kenny Anderson. Both Froch fights. Groves has never been defensively blessed. So I wasn't looking at the defensive frailties in the Cox fight and thinking, wow, he's a rejuvenated man. No, I was looking at the offensive things that George Groves did. And offensively, what I saw was a rejuvenated George Groves. I saw faster, sharper punches and movement than I've seen from Groves in years. Now, what could be the reason for that? Because looking at him after the Froch fights, to me, he looked like a jaded fighter. He looked like a fighter who was on the decline. And he certainly wasn't the same. But clearly, it can't be down to the fact that he is physically declining, because he managed to rejuvenate himself in this fight, according to what my eyes told me. So perhaps, as I mentioned in my post-fight video, it's a case where George Groves is one of those kind of fighters who needs sufficient motivation. Like, he needs to feel threatened by a particular fighter in order to train the way he needs to train to be at his absolute best. Some fighters are like that. They need a threat to get the best out of themselves. Nigel Benn, for example, was a fighter like that. You go look at Nigel Benn's reign as WBC super middleweight champion. A lot of his title defenses were quite mundane. It wasn't the old Dark Destroyer. It was Ben going through the motions a lot of the time and not really looking that dynamic. But then when he came up against Gerald McClellan, it was the old Dark Destroyer again. So maybe Groves is like that. Maybe he needs the feeling of a threat. And obviously Jamie Cox was a fighter who he picked as the easiest fight for him in the quarterfinals of the World Boxing Super Series as he saw it. That's what he said. So Cox wasn't necessarily the threat, but getting the Eubank fight is in George Groves' mind. Being in the World Boxing Super Series, he knew that they were going to face off after the Cox fight. He knew that Chris Eubank Jr. was going to attend the fight. So perhaps these kind of things were on George Groves' mind in the lead up to this fight. And that just took his training and his mindset and his hunger and his drive to a next level. And he was able to look a lot sharper than he has done for a long time. And again, as I said in my post-fight video, maybe he finds it easier as well to get up for domestic clashes. You know, there's more media interest in the UK when it's a domestic fight. You know, you look at George Groves when he fought Badou Jack. He was actually quite dismissive of Badou Jack. You know, if you go look at the things he said in the lead up to that fight, he didn't seem to perceive Badou Jack as a real threat. When he fought Chudinov, do you think Groves really saw Chudinov as a serious threat? That's not the impression I got. So again, perhaps that's why he's looked a little lethargic since the Froch fights, because he hasn't really faced anyone who, in his mind, he thought was a serious threat. Obviously, Jack was a serious threat, but Groves didn't seem to think so going into the fight. So, with Eubank, he said before this Jamie Cox fight, I've always seen Eubank as a threat. So again, maybe that's where the motivation has come from, to bring back perhaps the best George Groves, the old George Groves. you know? That's just my theory on it. That's my perception of it. And I've always liked the way George Groves fights, particularly the old version of Groves, you know, the Groves that fought the likes of, you know, Paul Smith and James DeGale, Carl Froch, etc. I always loved watching that version of George Groves because he was dynamic, exciting. He's a puncher. He's got tremendous power in that right hand. I mean, who else was able to hurt Carl Froch the way George Groves did in the first fight? So nobody is more happy than me to see George Groves' offense rejuvenated. And that's what I believe I saw in the Cox fight. So I'm extremely excited to see that that version of George Groves is back. Because he'll need to be that version of George Groves against Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr. right now is on fire. He's coming towards his peak. He's athletically extremely gifted. He's insanely dedicated. He just gets better and better every time I see him. Him against Groves, based on what I've seen Groves now from his, you know, from what I believe is his rejuvenated energy, his rejuvenated offensive prowess. Him against Eubank Jr. is an intriguing fight, an exciting fight, a massive fight in the UK. And this is not a prediction video, but just provisionally, when I'm imagining that fight in my head now, I'm thinking that Groves outboxes Eubank in the early part of the fight. Groves' power is no joke. Yeah, ask Carl Froch. Carl Froch has got a tremendous chin. And he was in all kinds of trouble when he caught that George Groves right hand in the first round on his chin. Are we to believe Chris Eubank Jr.'s got an even better chin than Carl Froch? I mean, it's possible, but you would find it unlikely. You know, you'd think it's unlikely. So he's going to have to respect that George Groves punching power. So I think it might be a fight where George Groves is outboxing Eubank Jr. early, but then Eubank Jr. comes on strong late in the fight. Because George Groves, in many fights, is known to fade late. That's been a reoccurring theme in Groves' career. And even though he's learned to pace himself better as he's gone along, you know, the Martin Murray fight, even the Badou Jack fight, he's learned to pace himself a little better as he goes along. Because of his style, because he's so explosive, George Groves, and he relies on, you know, big power shots and whatnot, I think it does take his toll. It's kind of like David Haye. You know, Haye's never going to be a high volume guy who can throw big powerful shots at a high volume. Groves adapted his style. He adjusted his style a little bit when he fought the likes of Rebras, where he wasn't really throwing with full power, but he was going for volume through that fight. That kind of style ain't going to work against Eubank Jr. He won't respect those kind of punches. He's going to have to hit him with them nitrogen, you know, atom bombs that he was throwing at Jamie Cox to keep Eubank Jr. honest. And that's going to take its toll on his energy levels, I think. So as the fight progresses, I think Eubank Jr. will come more and more into it. And Groves will probably have to weather a storm late in the fight to maybe go the distance. I think there's a good chance Eubank Jr. versus Groves is a distance fight, a 12-round fight. And yeah, I think Groves will probably have to weather a very, very serious late storm from Eubank. That's what I think. At the moment, that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. A very serious Eubank storm late. Eubank, we know, can rally late in fights and come on very strong. We saw that in the Chudinov fight, for example, when he fought Chudinov. Even in the Billy Joe Saunders fight, a fight where he was getting outboxed early, he rallied late, came on very strong in the late rounds. So he's got a history of doing basically the opposite of Groves, being a guy who can fight very hard, deep into the fight. So yeah, it's an intriguing fight, an exciting fight. I love watching both of these fighters when they're at their best. You know, I love the old George Groves, who appears to be back as far as what I can see. I love watching that guy. I love watching Chris Eubank Jr., the combination punching, the hand speed, all that kind of stuff. I'm very excited for this. For me, it's a win-win situation. Whoever wins, you know, may the best man win. Because I enjoy watching both fighters. So, yeah, let me know how you feel in the comment section below about how you think this fight will go. And again, I know there are people who are taking issue with me saying that Groves looked good. Look, I know what I'm looking for, yeah? Yes, he got caught with shots again. I don't want to have to go over it. Yes, he got caught with shots, but he's always been getting caught with shots. Yeah, and I realize if Eubank Jr. catches him with them same shots and catches him in them same positions that Jamie Cox caught him in, it's going to be a lot more dangerous for Groves. Eubank Jr., bigger and stronger than Jamie Cox, faster, more dynamic. You know, if he catches Groves on the ropes like that, he's probably going to do a lot more damage than Jamie Cox did. That's understood, yeah? But at the same time, you know, styles make fights. I don't think Eubank Jr. is necessarily going to take as many chances as Jamie Cox took. Jamie Cox took a lot of chances. He was quite reckless. Not as reckless as he normally is, but still fairly reckless when he was going in and trying to attack George Groves. I don't think that's Eubank Jr.'s style, to just throw caution to the wind when he's in there with a puncher as destructive as George Groves. You know, I mean, maybe I'll be wrong, but that's just my feeling on it. I don't think he'll be as reckless to take those chances in order to get Groves into those positions, you know. Not early in a fight anyway. I think it will take a while. Maybe Groves slows down a bit, then you'll see Eubank Jr. jumping on him and trying to pin him on the ropes and whatnot. So anyway, a lot to talk about here, people. Hopefully I've given you some food for thought. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below. It's Hatman, I'm out.